Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are presented by The Athletic. Today on the show, Mark Schindler is in the building. Schindler, what's going on, man?
Man, it has been a busy week. Feels like anything and everything has been going on. We're randomly getting a LeBron presser one-on-one before games tonight. So interested to see what that entails. But yeah, man, things are good. Just all over the place. How about you?
Things are good, man. Past the holidays now. I feel fully healthy again, which is really good. I'm no longer just having to run to the toilet to vomit, which is great.
Very happy for you.
So I'm feeling awesome at this point. But unfortunately, a fan base that shouldn't feel awesome is the Houston Rockets. So we're going to start with the Houston Rockets, and I kind of want to go on a bit of a rant on my frustrations with watching that team play. And then I want to talk about all NBA picks with you. That's really going to be the crux of the show. The Rockets are going to be like 15 minutes at the top. Then we're probably going to do like 40 minutes, 35 minutes on all NBA. And then we're going to talk about Brice Sensabaugh, my dearly beloved Ohio State Buckeye, who is unfortunately, slowly but surely, on the track to being a one and done. This just keeps happening to Chris Holtmann. Unfortunately, he keeps evaluating these guys at a better level than anyone else. Malachi Branham is another example of this from last year where, you think you're getting these guys for 2 years and it just ends up that their offensive system is so good and the player ends up being way better than what he was ranked in the recruiting class that it ends up being a situation where they don't keep them for multiple years. But I do want to start with the Houston Rockets. So the Houston Rockets are a mess. They are currently 10-29. They are last place in the Western Conference. For me, the frustrations with Houston, they're 29th in offense, 28th in defense. They're not really doing anything well right now. And there's nothing about the process that you can point to that looks positive. Before I get into my spiel in terms of my, what I want to see happen at this point, what have been your impressions of the Houston Rockets thus far this season, Mark?
I think it's tough because on one hand, yeah, you can look at the record and it's been disappointing. I do think there have been a couple of nicer growths. We had that 2 or 3 week spurt where they were really playing well. It felt like they were in every single game. Felt like they were really starting to find some sort of offensive identity. And then the last 2 weeks, that's really dissipated. We got the Eric Gordon comments right after Christmas, basically saying that he wasn't wrong, but to have a player who's a veteran on that team come out and say that, knowing that they're being recorded was something, basically just saying, we haven't improved on anything. We suck. And just seeing some of the stuff too, I don't know how much validity there was to it, but from somebody who was at the game, I believe 2 days ago, when they got absolutely destroyed by the Utah Jazz as the game went down the stretch, Jabari Smith was yelling to pull Alperen Şengün because of what it looked like defensively.
Was it the Jazz or the Pelicans?
It was the Pelicans game. My bad.
I thought it was the Pelicans.
And point being, that's not to point fingers at any player, but it's clear that players are pointing fingers at one another on that team. That's not great. I think that's contributing to a lot of what has been playing out on court, which is I don't like using the term selfish basketball, but there's been a lot of selfish basketball.
No. We have to use it for the Houston Rockets.
It's been really difficult to watch at times. And it just does not feel good. Steven Silas got thrown out of that game. Was that against, I can't remember if that was against the Jazz or the Pelicans right now on top of my head. But point being, there's a lot bubbling up in Houston right now that has felt like it's been on the horizon for a while, and I think it's finally coming to a head.
Yeah, they've lost 11 of 12, including games to the Spurs, the Magic, the Knicks at home, the Mavericks at home, the Jazz at home, the Blazers at home, the Heat at home. A lot of these games just weren't all that competitive either. The Jazz game was not competitive at home. Even the Knicks game was not competitive at home. It felt like, and they've had some competitive ones. They lost by 6 to Orlando. They lost by, I want to say 3 to the Heat when starting this little 11 losses in 12 games stretch here. But when I watch that team, there just is no it feels like, I don't want to say that it feels like there is no plan. It feels like there is a lot of selfish basketball play occurring on the court where, for instance, last night or 2 nights ago, I think against the Pelican, I can't remember. There's like a possession that Steve Jones pointed out on Twitter. And like, I watched this full game, but like Steve, I think put it the right way. Just like, where is the ball movement basically, where it's like, okay, Jalen Green is in the corner. He's going to dribble for 8 seconds. He's going to kick it out to Eric Gordon. He's going to dribble for 8 seconds. And he kicks it to Kevin Porter. They haven't even gotten inside the 3-point line yet. It feels like he's going to dribble for 8 seconds. Then he's going to throw up a wild shot. Right. And that's just not good basketball. But more importantly, for this team that is very young, and there are other issues here in terms of like the roster build and everything, it's just not conducive to development. That's the big thing that I keep coming back to. Like, the way that the Rockets play basketball is not helping any of these guys actually develop on the court. And they need Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Alperen Şengün, Tari Eason, etc. down the list in terms of all of the young guys, Usman Garuba, Ty Washington, Kenyon Martin Jr., like, etc. They have so many young guys. They need them to get better. And Kevin Porter Jr. is like second in the NBA in turnovers right now. I think Jalen Green's like top 20 in the NBA in turnovers right now. And it's just because they dribble constantly and incessantly, game after game after game. And like, part of it is that you can look at it and be like for instance, like when I watch Alperen Şengün, right? I don't know if he's good or not yet watching him. Like, there are great things that he does on the court. There are phenomenal things he does on the court where he can handle the ball. He's a legit mismatch opportunity. He can go out and grab and go in transition. He's a really high level passer. He's a great offensive rebounder, but like, he's really bad defensively still. He's not good in pick and roll coverages. He's a bit undersized for the center position, so the bigger guys can kind of beast him a little bit on the defensive glass. That actually has been like a bit of a problem for them this year, that he doesn't really hold up his own on the defensive glass. And then on top of it, he can't shoot and loves to operate in that little like mid post area. So when Jalen Green, Kevin Porter are driving, he can't really pop out and shoot because he can't shoot. He's just not a threat there. So nobody treats him as a threat there. So everyone just drops them and says, okay, we're just going to pack the paint the entire time. And he's often kind of standing in the mid post or in the dunker spot. And it clogs everything up in a very real way, to where there are things he does on the court that are great. And like, when they run the offense through him at times, you can see a world where he can do a lot of those things and make your team better in the same way that someone like a Nikola Vucevic can. But then you watch them dribble and try and like operate in the mid post, and it's like, well, he's just kind of taking up space in a big way and like isn't really a threat when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, unless he's like crashing the offensive glass off of misses. So it's complicated. Like, Alperen Şengün is like is like just indicative, I think, of this entire situation. And we can point to the front office, I think, here, right? Like, we need to have a conversation about that, where there are no real veteran leaders seemingly on this team outside of maybe Eric Gordon, right? Jayshawn Tate's the captain, but Jayshawn Tate up until last night, like, has missed a lot of time. I think he's played 5 games this year, 6 games, something like that. It's, Eric Gordon's coming out in the public saying there is no improvement. I believe was his quote. They need vets. Like, they need older dudes to come in and hold people accountable as much as anything. It seems like Jabari Smith is trying to hold people accountable. Like, him yelling at Alperen Şengün, I don't really have a problem with that, to be honest. Him yelling at the coaches to take him out, like, that's competitive. It's frustrating. They're losing a lot, but it comes out of a positive place. If I was Şengün, I'd be frustrated with that, like, understandably, but I think it comes from a good place. And there are real front office issues, but ultimately where I'm going with this is I do think it's time for a coaching change there. I don't know if Steven Silas is bad. Like, I don't know if he's a bad coach or not, but I do feel pretty confident at this point that he's not the coach for this group to try and take them to the next developmental level, yeah, you can point to the front office and say that they have not made Steven Silas's job easy in terms of not giving them vets. But I don't think Steven Silas is helping matters at all with what he's doing out there. I just don't like this. The process is not good when you watch the Houston Rockets. So I think it's time, to be honest. Like I think we've kind of seen enough at this point. They've lost 11 of 12. I think this is kind of the time that's ripe. And as much as anything, what a coaching change does is it changes, it puts the onus more on the players at that point, I think, to say, look, we've changed the coach. We know that, like, now if it still fails after we've changed the coach, that's a good indication that it's not the coach, it's you guys. And then we have to start making moves with you guys. So as much as anything, I just want to see a different process. I want to see different offense being run. I want to see more ball movement. I want to see more. I just want to see more like inclusive basketball when these guys play.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be a two-pronged attack for them because, like you're mentioning, it's not. I mean, I haven't really been inspired by Steven Silas, but also it's hard to know with what he has to work with. I mean,
he might be an okay coach. Like I'm not saying that he's a bad coach.
Oh
I
yeah, no, I don't
think it's working there.
For sure. I mean, like when you start having all of this shit happening with guys blowing up like this, like that's, to me, that is on coaching to some extent. But like I appreciate you bringing up the front office as well, because this is just not much on just as much on them to clean up. So saying mess is the wrong way to put it, but like this is the bed that they made, so they have to rectify it. Like they have to be willing to bring in a couple vets. Like I think that it is already time to part with a few of their young players. As much as that's not appealing, they need to bring in veteran players who are A, going to be comfortable in their roles, and B, are going to elevate what guys do. Like when you have so many guys who are all trying to figure out their games, and clearly like you have nights where some guys are maybe trying to do a little too much because they're still trying to figure out their roles, or they want to have a bigger role. And that's not an indictment on them. That's part of being a young player. And I think when you even look ahead to what this next draft is going to be, they have multiple picks in this coming draft. How are they, like, I already have questions about how they're supposed to, obviously it's going to be different because you're going to have really high-end talent coming in based on where they draft, but that adds even more questions to, okay, how are you going to fill out this roster in a meaningful way that gives you there have been nights where, just based on a week, even with guys being healthy, like Steven Silas has played like 11 guys and gone into very different lineups night to night. Like there's got to be some more direction built out through that. I think part of that comes with adding more veteran guys who can show that up, who can be steady presences, on the sidelines and in the locker room, and just in general having more direction there. And that's not to say that there isn't a good base of what the talent is, but in terms of actually like, hammering it out into something that's going to be different from this next year, I think that, I'm there with you that they need to make some pretty significant changes.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the picks thing, right? Like they have a lottery pick, like undeniably what will be a very, very high-end pick in this draft. They're currently tied with Charlotte for the worst record in the league, but they also have pick 28 in this draft. If I was them, I would move pick 28 because I just would not want another like borderline young player on this roster. You have Usman Garuba, KJ Martin, Tari Eason, Ty Washington, et cetera, right? In terms of the young guys that you're already trying to develop on this team, that's just a lot of roster spots for young guys that are all trying to find their games at once. I think it would behoove them to move this pick and just say, look, we can't take on another borderline prospect like this, right? Go out, move that pick for a veteran who can just be an adult in the room, right? I know that, like, here's the other part of that too. That makes you potentially better this year. And that's not something anyone in Houston wants at this point, I would imagine. Like, they probably want to be worse as much as they can be. But, like, can you find a veteran that isn't going to help your win-loss total this year, but will bring some accountability to the organization. They're so bad at this point, though, that I think that like even adding real accountability, just given how young they are and everything, it's probably not gonna affect their win-loss total to the point where they fall out of the top 4, right? Like they are 6.5 games ahead of the number 6 spot right now. So like they have no chance really of falling out of the top 5 in the draft lottery. And like the odds go for number 1 overall, which is really the pick that they want, like 14% to 10.5% at that point. I almost think that like getting better and getting more veteran help in there is probably worth that 3.5% drop odds wise in terms of getting the number 1 overall pick. And the odds are that you probably won't drop that far, even if you get better, just because a lot of your guys are still trying to figure out how to play at this point. So yeah, that's where I'm at on Houston.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, man.
It's frustrating. It's a frustrating team to watch, but I think they need to make a change. Like they need to just make a circuit breaker move. And typically the circuit breaker is changing coaches, in my opinion. So, okay, let's go to all NBA picks. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Okay. Let's jump into all NBA picks. Can you remember? I think it's always hard midseason to make all NBA picks because some guys get hurt. The minute totals are all a lot closer than what they'll be at the end of the year. You know, things come up over the course of the back half of the season that sometimes just knock guys out of the all NBA picture.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember anything being this hard as picking all NBA teams.
Yeah, this sucked, frankly. I did this for like an hour and a half yesterday, and I just kind of doing first and second team was fine, other than like a couple bumps where I was like, I want to have this guy first team, but I have to have him second team. Doing a third team sucked, frankly. Like I did not enjoy that. It worked horrible. To all of you wonderful people listening, we're going to upset some of you. I already have an idea of the demographic I will upset. I'm sorry in advance. I don't hate your player. I just hate that I had to do this. So I love that I got to do it with you, Sam. But yeah, this is I'm excited to dive in. Let's do it. You just wanted to rip them off and go from there?
Let's just rip them off. But we're gonna kind of talk about like candidates and everything first. So for the guard position, I was able to narrow down to Devin Booker, Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Tyrese Halliburton, De'Aaron Fox, James Harden, Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Ja Morant.
Yeah, the only other people that I considered that I ended up there will be some guys on there that I ended up not having, but like I had Kyrie because he's been incredible this year, so he was a thought process for me. I did not end up having him. Trey.
Kyrie is a good one that we probably should mention.
Did you mention
he
Trey?
is legitimately in this mix. I did mention Trey.
Okay, yeah, I can't hear. My bad. And then the only other two guys, Drew Holiday and Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart ended up being decently far off, but like I just have to say, like, Jesus Christ, this season's been awesome, man. Like this has been. I'm trying to think who just wrote about this. Somebody just wrote a really good article about Marcus Smart really stepping into his role as a playmaker this year, and I just have to tip the hat to him.
Yeah. Look, I did not have Marcus anywhere near this. I'll just
that's very okay
with you.
I mean, this is me going like, well, he'd be like my 14th guard for all NBA. So
yeah, Drew was higher and was a guy that I took a brief look at before defaulting to other players.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For the forwards, this is a miserable conversation. I had Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant. This is not in order. This is just candidates at this point still. Paul George, Jimmy Butler, DeMar DeRozan, LeBron James, Jeremy Grant, Pascal Siakam, Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, and LeBron. Did I get everyone?
The only other people that did you have Jaylen Brown?
I did not have Jaylen Brown. I should have Jaylen Brown.
Okay, because
I did consider Jaylen Brown. I just didn't list him in my little thing here.
No, you're good. I had Jaylen Brown there, and then a couple others. But again, this is more like you're going farther down. Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yep.
Julius Randle, who I would not have, but again, it's going to be tough to not have Julius Randle as an all-star this year. He's been very damn good offensively again. It's going to depend on where the Knicks fall again as they kind of try and even out, but just have to shout him out. And Lauri Markkanen. Lowry's been awesome.
Yep.
I watched his 49-point game this morning, and man, I know we just talked about him recently, but I still am just amazed watching him play this year. He's been awesome. So he wouldn't make it, but he's on the short list.
Yeah. With Randall would probably be all NBA second quarter of the season. I think he's definitely been one of the 15 best players in the league from the game 20 mark onward. Over his last 19 games, he's averaging 28 points, 11 rebounds, 4.4 assists while shooting 46% from the field, 35% from 3 on 9 3-point attempts per game. Can you imagine when Julius Randle came out of Kentucky thinking there would be a 20-game stretch where he would shoot 9 3-pointers?
I never thought that in my life, but I will say, I thought he was going to be the truth, man. I was like, this is the guy who's going to bring the Lakers back, and that's what I thought in my sophomore year of high school. Ended up not being right, but it has been a joy to watch him.
He's made an All-NBA team, so that's a really great.
I mean, exactly. That's a perfect encapsulation of my thoughts.
8 free throw attempts per game, 74% from the line. Yeah. Julius Randle has been amazing for the second quarter of the season. Ultimately, I couldn't get him onto this group because I thought he was actually pretty not great for the first quarter of the season. Mm-hmm. Defensively, particularly watching him in the first quarter was not ideal. And that was enough for him to end up kind of near the back end of this group. Mm-hmm. At the center position, our candidates, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, Domantas Sabonis, Bam Adebayo. Those were really the 5 I considered for those 3 spots.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Though, because you take a big jump when you're going back down. I think Brook had a decent shot at this. He's probably the next closest. But again, that's okay, I think you're going that's 15 players worse. If you're just doing rankings in your head, however you want to go about it. And that's not a slight at Brook, more just the top crop has been that freaking good this year.
Is Brook Lopez or Miles Turner had a better year?
Brook Lopez for me. I think Miles has been awesome, but I think Brook's been a little bit better defensively. Well, I don't know if I'd say he's been better offensively, but
I definitely don't think he's been better offensively. I will say that. I think that Miles now being able to put the ball on the deck a little bit is a pretty big differentiator for those two.
I'd probably be a little bit closer with that, but Miles definitely has been fantastic this year.
Yeah. But when we're getting I just don't think that Miles Turner and Bam, for instance, or Miles Turner and Sabonis, for instance, is really all that tight. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we've laid out all of the candidates. Let's jump into first team All NBA. So for first team All NBA, I thought that the first guard, at least, was very simple. It is Luka Doncic, right? Luka Doncic has been absolutely unbelievable this season. He's currently averaging 34 points, 8.8 rebounds, 8.7 assists, shooting 50, 35, 74, getting to the line 11 times per game, 61.4 true shooting percentage. That is 4 points above league average. He's carrying the Dallas Mavericks on his back right now. He's a top 5, top 6 MVP candidate. I did not have any compunction, any issue picking Luka Doncic. I honestly thought he was probably the easiest choice out of any of these guys.
Yeah, he was an easy first slot in. I can't really add anything to that other than just he's been unreal. Steph Curry was my second guy on first team All
Steph is
NBA.
also my second first team All NBA guy.
Yeah, I thought even with him missing time, I thought for the other than like with Luka's recent stretch, um, and I mean you can say this about multiple guys like Jokic's stretch has been unreal. Even with the Bucks losing, Giannis has been on a tear recently. But I think Steph, at least for the first 20, 25 games, was the best player in the NBA. So pretty easy for me to have him first team right now.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I know Steph has missed quite a bit of time at this point. If you compare the minute totals that Steph has played this season to someone like, for instance, Ja Morant, Steph has played about 900 minutes this season. Ja Morant has only played about 1070 so far. So that's like a difference of 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to say that that difference is not big enough for me to not have Stephen Curry as first team All NBA, given how incredibly impressive he was in those first stretch of games. He's shooting 50% from the field, 43% from three, 92% from the line. His true shooting percentage currently is 66.8. That's basically right in line with his best seasons. His best season ever is 67.5 in 2018 when he played those 51 games. In 2016, it was 66.9. Now, of course, it's worth remembering the true shooting percentage has risen. So back then, his true shooting percentage, his advanced true shooting percentage or whatever you want to call it was 124, whereas this season it's 116, right? So he's basically 16% better than league average, as opposed to 24% back then. He is damn near close to as good as he was back in his MVP season is the point, or MVP seasons is the point here. I absolutely had to have him first team. I get that like he's played a little bit less, but I'm guessing that by the end of the year, it's not really going to be that hard of a conversation as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, I agree. And I do want to just rip off early too. I tried not to care too much about minutes, honestly. Like I think as long as a guy, I had just about 60% of their games was kind of my cutoff point. And then I just tried to like not let it factor in from there just because I'm fine with people doing it the other way, but just for me, I don't like having to add that extra layer. I'm just going to go off that. So just putting that out there.
Okay. First team All NBA forwards is by far the hardest decision, I think. There are 3 people for 2 spots. There are 3 people genuinely in the top 6 of the NBA MVP picture. There are 3 guys that I think you could legitimately have as the top 3 MVP candidates if you really wanted to, in Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jason Tatum. I've talked at length about these 3 on a podcast earlier this week with Jason Timpf. I had Kevin Durant at number 1 in my MVP picture. I had Giannis Antetokounmpo at number 4, and I had Jason Tatum at number 6 in my MVP votes right now. If you want reasoning on that, you can go listen to that podcast. It's really good. I would absolutely point you there. But I will give the floor to Mark now to be able to give his explanation on how he sorted through the 2 first team All NBA forward spots.
Yeah, I ended up going Tatum and Durant. I think Giannis has been unreal this year, but I think that's been more so like Tatum has just been at another level this year. I think like you can just look, Celtics have been by and large the best team for the start of the season. His offense has just taken that extra leap. And I think to be fair too, like his defense was really good to start the year. He took a little bit of a step back alongside the Celtics at large. I think it's been a little better of late. I do think it's just a little, and this is again, we're nitpicking when talking about the top 5 players in the league. Giannis's efficiency just hasn't quite been the same as it was last year. He isn't shooting quite at the same levels as a jump shooter that I think he found for large stretches of last year, which is to me what made him a near MVP candidate, or not a near, like he was a very clear MVP guy. But I mean, like he found that as we've talked about before, like he found that extra gear, just really destroying people out of posts, reposting, attacking out of face ups after getting a post up opportunity and then driving back out. And it just hasn't hit quite the same this year. And part of that is the Bucks at large, but that's just me saying, I think Tatum just has a slight edge right now. It could change as the year goes on, but that's where it would lead. Ultimately, I wish I could have Giannis on first team because he is deserving of being there. If this was positionless, he'd be on there.
Yes, like no question. I will say I do think Giannis is a better player than Jason Tatum, which is kind of what I defaulted to.
Mhm.
I also think that like the Celtics started so hot based off of their insane shooting, and that happened. When we're talking about like an all MVP or all NBA voting situation, I think you have to just go off of what happened, and Jason Tatum being an all world pull up shooter from three for the first like 25 games of the season happened. And whether my concerns about how sustainable his pull up shooting is are founded or not, it happened, right? I do think that Giannis Antetokounmpo's ability to dominate a basketball game by getting to the rim whenever he wants, by playing the defensive end of the court at an exceptionally high level, especially now that Brook Lopez is back, it's just really hard to score on them at all, really. Like there's just not another way to put it. I'm glad you brought up the defense with Tatum. They've been okay defensively. Like I think they're somewhere between 10 and 15 defensively right now in the league. And I think that Tatum has taken a bit of a step back over the course of the second quarter of the season, whereas Giannis continues to just like dominate and bully games at such a high level. I chose Kevin Durant as my MVP pick already this year. I don't really need to rehash that. If you want to listen to that, go listen to Jason Timpf and I explain why I would have Kevin Durant as my midseason MVP. He is shooting just so exceptionally high. It's such a ridiculously high level and has been the core centerpiece of the Nets defense, which has actually been a really, really critical part of their resurgence. They are top 10 in defense and offense right now. And that is basically on the back of Jason Tatum or on the back of Kevin Durant. Whereas I think Tatum just has a lot more help at this point on the defensive end. I went Kevin Durant and Giannis, but if you want to make a case for Jason Tatum, as Mark did, I'll absolutely hear it out. And I think it's completely reasonable to have Jason Tatum as first team all NBA at the midseason point. Okay. First team all center is a battle between Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. Now, the argument for Embiid is he's second in the NBA in scoring while anchoring a top 5 defense. The argument for Nikola Jokic is that he is essentially like carrying the Denver Nuggets to the second best record in the league. And I believe that they might actually be tied now with Philadelphia 76ers for best No. The Sixers are a game and a half behind now still. But they are basically, the Nuggets are unbelievable. Like watching Nikola Jokic, like how do you even describe Nikola Jokic? He's like the best offensive player in the NBA. I think it's just what it comes down to. He is currently at a 67 true shooting percentage, or no, a 69 true shooting percentage. I'm sorry, that's 12 points above league average, while averaging, I believe 25 points per game. And if you look at the per 100 numbers, they're basically like on level with Dirk's best seasons, while being more efficient than Dirk's best seasons, while also being the best passer in the NBA. He is a centrifugal offensive force unto himself in such a substantial way that I had to put him first team. I think Joel Embiid is genuinely like a top 6 MVP candidate right now. I had him at 5. I just don't think I don't think he's first team all NBA. I think Jokic's ability to drive offense is such an unbelievably substantial advantage for the Denver Nuggets that I couldn't drop him to second team.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add to that. Like other than I think watching him, like you've seen Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
It's basically like Hermione with the time turner in Prisoner of Azkaban. That's how it feels watching him play basketball. He just is, he's playing on a different time speed plane than anybody else right now. So yeah, I couldn't have him off here. So I'm right there with you. And Joel's been awesome. He's my second team all NBA center. I mean, I think we can lead with that. But I mean, Jokic just, especially this has been like the quietest like 2 or 3 weeks of just absolutely dominant play. And they've looked so much better. They just blew out the Clippers last night on national TV. Like they have just, I can't remember. I know they've lost to the Clippers at some point, in the last year, but they've been dominant against them every time they've come out. It just feels like they kind of really have it nailed in on how they want to beat the shit out of them. So that was a fun game to watch last night.
So let's go to second team All NBA. Do you remember how early in the season we were a little bit worried about Joel Embiid? Just like a little bit. He wasn't moving super well. There was a report about a foot injury that Doc Rivers just kind of slyly mentioned in a press conference. It seemed like his pick and roll defense was a little bit of a problem early on.
Mm-hmm.
From game 13 onward for the Philadelphia 76ers, Joel Embiid is averaging 36 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.9 blocks, while shooting 54, 38, 86.
That's pretty good.
Joel Embiid is averaging 36 points per game over his last 20 games. This is the best I've seen him play. This is absolutely the best I've seen Joel Embiid play at this point. And I can't believe I don't have him first team All NBA, but I just kind of can't quite get there. Like, what Joel Embiid is doing genuinely is one of the best performances, it feels like, in the last 5 years of the NBA. It's just that we're also in the midst of Nikola Jokic putting up one of the best performances in the last decade of the NBA. Offensively. So I just, any Philadelphia fan that's mad, I get it. I absolutely understand it. Joel Embiid is breaking worlds. He's running their offense almost as much as James Harden is at this point. It feels like he's initiating sets regularly. It's unbelievable what he's been able to do. And I just think Jokic is better. And I'm sorry about that.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, at this stage, I can't disagree with that. I think exactly like you hit on. I mean, the defense can be absolutely dominant for stretches at times. And then it's mainly just been the offense and his scoring and his ability to just take over. Other than, I mean, I think what's so difficult sometimes is when you have something that you can compare to that almost feels slightly impressive is the wrong way, but slightly more I think of it like this. If Giannis wasn't in the NBA or just didn't exist as a player, Joel is the guy that I think people talk about in the way that he drives the lane. Just being 7'2" with the coordination and fluidity that he has. I just think about it so often. It's always it's the slot pick and rolls when he turns his hips into a roll and catches the ball from 20 feet out, and you're just okay, well, that's a bucket or an and one. And he's been unreal to watch this season. Well, I do think too, I mean, my biggest separator is just it's the passing. I think the turnovers still can be a problem. It's not been as bad as it was earlier in the year. And again, we're talking about differentiating between top 5, 6 NBA players, but I think that's the only real thing that kind of holds him back to me.
Yeah, and
it's more so that Jokic just been that good than him being.
Yeah, I was gonna say Joel has gotten better at it, I think, for sure. And you mentioned that slot pick and roll where he catches, and it's just okay, I can pump fake and get this guy in the air and then drive and finish, or I can just shoot this jumper, or I can back him down and score that way, or I can just try and roll all the way to the rim and score that way. It's literally the versatility of Joel Embiid's skill set is unbelievable. And I feel like we don't talk about how good he is enough because of all of the incredible performances that we've seen over the course of the last 3 weeks in the NBA. But in any other year, Joel Embiid would be a runaway MVP, I feel like, at this point.
Mm-hmm. No, without a doubt.
Wouldn't even be close, I feel like. Mm-hmm. It's just that this year we have this incredible star-laden turn from everyone. Okay, so we started second team All NBA with Joel Embiid. We started second team All NBA with Jason Tatum as well. In my case, Giannis Antetokounmpo in Mark's case. Who is your second team All NBA forward?
Zion Williamson.
Also mine. I think that this is a relatively easy pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I was trying to differentiate between who I was going to have on second and third team after Giannis, Zion was an easy pick for me. The defense has really improved this year. Um, and the offense is just, I mean, especially in that stretch prior to injury where, and first of all, like just rest up, hope he gets well soon, is able to get back quickly. But the offense, like unto himself, has been like when they really have turned him loose as being kind of the real initiator of offense for them, bringing the ball up more. It's been pretty unstoppable. Minus that one Grizzlies game. He's been really damn good, other than when teams can really crowd him with length and be, aggressive on the interior. Even then, that's like, okay, you're talking about a team having to sell out to having 3 or 4 guys on the paint at all time just to try and negate what he does.
Well, and a team having Jaren Jackson Jr., who is the best defender in the NBA right now, if not like the second or third best defender in the NBA, as well as having like the strongest player in the NBA with Steven Adams behind him sometimes.
It's a good mix.
It's a good mix to stop that.
Yeah, no, exactly. But like, I mean, just everything he's doing has been unreal. The scoring, I feel like every game there are 3 or 4 clips that I pull where I'm just like, how does anybody do this? I've never seen anybody do anything like that before. That moves like that has that kind of frame. And it's not just like a wow factor. It's more the wow factor mixed with how efficient and otherworldly has been as a driver. And it like, I mean, there were some spurts earlier on in the season where not that his passing felt bad, but it felt like, okay, this is like a point forward-y guy, but not like that full engine type that we'd seen in years prior. And then again, like when they really turned the ball into his hands, okay, you saw that really hitting again. And I'm excited for them to get back to it and what that looks like with him and Brandon Ingram.
Totally agree. Okay. The guards is where this gets very difficult.
Yes, it does.
Okay. My first pick for second team All NBA guard was Donovan Mitchell.
Yep.
Do you have Donovan Mitchell second team All NBA?
I do have Donovan Mitchell second team All NBA.
Okay. Donovan Mitchell, even beyond the 71-point game where he was just utterly phenomenal and carried the Cavs to a win and had an incredible missed free throw rebound that like forced overtime and everything. 29 points, 4 rebounds, 4.9 assists, shooting 49% from the field, 41% from 3, 87% from the line. His free throw rate is as good as it's ever been. His drives have been really high level, but more than anything, it's the pull-up shooting this year, right? Like his pull-up shooting has just been astronomically good. People have complained throughout Donovan Mitchell's career about his efficiency and about how he's like a league average accumulator in terms of efficiency. He currently has a 62.6 true shooting percentage that is 5.5 points above league average while averaging 29 points per game. Everything that Donovan Mitchell does as a self-creator this season has worked. The mix between he and Darius Garland has been really, really high level. And the pick and rolls with he and Jarrett Allen have been really, really high level so far this season. The Cavs are really good. Donovan Mitchell is the biggest reason why the Cavs are really good. I think Donovan Mitchell is like very clearly deserving of second team All NBA.
Yeah, I would go as far as saying like he's a fringe MVP candidate for me. I mean,
I have him in the top 10.
Yeah, that's part of being it. I mean, that's part of being an All NBA guy. But yeah, like you mentioned, the pull-up shooting's just been unreal this year, and he's gotten back to playing real defense. It's not like game-breaking stuff, but he's competing, he's trying, and it's been for me at least a net neutral. But the offense overall, like he's fitting so well there, and like just the overall shooting. Like when I pulled the pull-up shooting numbers, like I think it was 2 weeks ago when I looked at it for the first time, because I knew it was good. And then I pulled them like, oh, okay, that's like good.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I thought he was a borderline All NBA guy last year. And this year, I think he's truly been there with what his efficiency has been and how he gets to the rim too. Part of what I've loved, I mean, having him with Jarrett Allen, in some ways, I think Jarrett's been a better roller and screener for him than Rudy was. Not saying that he's a better player than Rudy has been this year, but in looking at, what that dynamic was, I think you just see a little bit more in terms of getting more out of it. Not that Rudy wasn't a lob threat, but Jarrett's just a different kind of lob threat. Brings a little bit extra oomph that like just by being a little bit more mobile, being a little bit more spry, having more in terms of that one dribble pump and go. it just opens up a little bit more for Donovan by having that extra versatility as a player. So that's been really fun to watch. I was such a big fan of this happening when they made the trade, and I couldn't be any more of a fan of it than I am now.
Yeah, I think that they absolutely nailed this across the board, and there's just no other way to look at it. Let's go to second team All NBA guard now. I will let you go first.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Okay, I have him third team, so we're in a similar boat here. Give me why you have Shai second team, and I'll explain why I think he's also been great as well.
Yeah, I have Shai second team just due to the absurd scoring. Like, I would go other than Luka. This might sound like a hot take, but in terms of when you're talking about the pressure that he puts on a defense, I think that he's been the second best scoring guard in the NBA this year. And that's over Steph. Like, I think Steph's been unreal, but with what Shai does driving the basketball, with his finishing on the interior, with what he does from the mid-range as well, obviously he's cut down his three-point attempts, and that's been for his betterment. I think that's an area that right now it looks fine, but I do think as they get to higher levels, it's going to matter more. But that he's just kind of an unstoppable force unto himself. And I can't get that game against Boston out of my head from earlier in this year.
Yeah.
When Boston was they threw every single coverage in the books at him, trying to just negate his scoring ability or try to take it away, and it didn't work. So I would have Shai second team, especially too because his defense has actually been like it's happened at points this year. Like, it hasn't been like last year was pretty embarrassing, but this year, this has been a really unreal season from him. Like, I went from last year thinking, okay, this 40 game stretch is really cool. It's exciting. It's real. But what does this look like in another year? And he's been even better. So yeah, I'm there with Shai, especially, that's without even adding all what he does as a passer. I think it's tough because I think a lot of times people look at what he does as a passer just based on box score. And it's like, this isn't that impressive. But I'm like, okay, just if he's playing with better than, one of the bottom 5 shooting teams in the NBA, you're going to look at that a lot differently. He's been sensational this year. I'm just glad he's been healthy.
Yeah, Oklahoma City so far this season is 20th in 3-point rate and 17th in 3-point percentage. Josh Giddey is just like a guy that teams don't guard. He's shooting 34 on 3 attempts per game, but like guys just don't really care if he shoots, if I'm being completely honest. Jalen Williams is 28% from 3 right now. Kenrich Williams doesn't take a lot of them, but he's 40% from 3. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl doesn't take a lot of them, 38% from 3 though. He hasn't played a lot of minutes with Trey Mann, but Trey Mann's only at 31% from 3. It's a situation where the court is always so condensed when Shai is on the court. And I think that's almost why his game is so aesthetically pleasing. Like, the degree of difficulty on his drives where he has to slither and slide with his footwork through 4 different bodies to get to the rim. It's unbelievable. There may not be a more aesthetically pleasing player in the NBA. Maybe that's what we'll do next week. All aesthetically pleasing NBA players right now in the league. Just guys that you enjoy watching because of how fun they are or because of just how their games look in some different way. Shai is that for me.
Yeah.
I adore watching Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play basketball because of his footwork and because of the way that he drives and the way he thinks through his drives as well. Like, his rapid reactivity to how to get to the rim, I think is really, really impressive. Yeah. I had Shai third team. I had Ja Morant second team. Ja Morant this season has been really, really good. He's averaging 27 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists while shooting 46% from the field. 31% from 3. And if you look at the efficiency numbers, he is actually a little bit below league average in terms of efficiency. Now, I think that Ja's passing and scoring abilities are a big driver for that offense. And really, at the end of the day, at times almost the sole driver for that offense, especially with Desmond Bane out of games. And this is an offense that is still somehow top half of the league. This is a team that is 25-13 currently, tied for the second best record in the NBA. I know that like Ja has not made 3-pointers this year. I know that Memphis's defense has arguably been more important than their offense. Honestly, like maybe inarguably been more important than their offense. But I think that Ja's ability to make difficult things fly for that offense, because without Desmond Bane for basically the entire second quarter of the season, it felt like that was a situation where it was just very, very difficult for them to have any space because teams don't care if Dylan Brooks shoots. Steven Adams does not shoot threes. John Conchar is a reluctant 3-point shooter. Santi Aldama, teams don't care if he shoots threes. Brandon Clark does not shoot threes. It's another situation where contextually the lane is always so clogged for Ja Morant, and he's still deriving offense at the rim at an exceptionally elite level while also being one of the best playmakers and passers in the NBA. I get that the efficiency numbers are not great, in large part because he still needs to continue to make that next step as a pull-up shooter. But given that he is the main reason why Memphis has the second best record in the NBA right now, I had to get him second team All NBA.
Yeah. I do not have John Morant on All NBA. He's my first guard off. And I understand that is going to probably frustrate some people. I feel bad about it already. That's how I leaned. I can explain that one more. Are we done with second team All NBA now?
So you had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I had John Morant. I have Shai third team.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about why you don't have Ja first, I think.
I know that the defense has gotten better this year. I don't think that it's been demonstratively better in a way that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable on that end. I just really struggle with the efficiency. And that's not, again, Ja is incredible. I think that he is like I will have no qualms about him making the NBA third team. It's less about him not being good enough and more about I just thought that there was somebody who has been that much harder for me to keep off. I think like the passing is unreal and some of the stuff he does as interior score have been really good, but he hasn't really made that leap as a finisher that I was hoping that we would see on floaters and just more in the mid-range. Which I think is going to be really critical for his game moving forward. And again, like this team has been fantastic. He drives a ton of it. I just can't quite get there with him being there in terms of who else I would have to take off. And some of the other seasons that have been going on. Again, it's more just when you're considering how efficient some other guys have been while doing while carrying similar loads and doing a little bit more on the defensive end. I do struggle a little bit more just to put him over them.
I get it. I will be interested to hear who your third team guards are. I will say that. Okay, so let's move to the third team now. We've both given our top two teams in full now. I have Devin Booker as a third team guard.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk briefly about Devin Booker here. Devin Booker has been really, I think it's very clear the driving force behind Phoenix's play early throughout the first 30 games of the season before they've taken this nosedive without him, where they're now 20-19 and 8th in the Western Conference. He is the one that's driving play just straight up. There's not another way to put it. I think he's really improved as a passer this season. His shooting efficiency is always one of those things that has bugged me to an extent because he's a great shooter that the numbers haven't always lined up necessarily. Mm-hmm. But this season, the numbers are lining up. He's shooting 48% from the field, 37% from three on a lot of pull-up threes, 85% from the line. Like I said, you look at the passing and playmaking, he's been really, really critical there. I think he's taken on an even bigger load from Chris Paul than what he has previously, because Chris Paul has been a bit worse this year, demonstrably worse, I think is probably a better way to put it. Devin Booker has just been an all-around offensive force so far this season. Like if you wanted to have Devin Booker in the top 10 of MVP right now, based off of how disastrous Phoenix looks without him, I think that's a completely reasonable and strong take.
Yeah, I had Booker would have beat out Shai for me. It was close. I think I ended up leaning with Shai just because of what the scoring's been from him. But Yeah, Booker's been unreal this year. I think his best year of his career pretty easily. I still like there's more and more that I want to see with the playmaking coming along to different levels, because I think that's like just one of the few things that, again, it's nitpicks when you're talking about top 15 guys in the league. But like you mentioned, the shooting has been unreal this year. When you look at what has happened for Phoenix this year, and part of it is just Chris's fall off early in the year. This is the first year where there haven't been is Devin really the best player on Phoenix?
No, it's abundantly clear.
yeah, it's been extremely clear that he's the best player on that team. So yeah, I have no qualms about him being on 13. Is where I'd have him.
He would be my number 5 guard.
Yeah.
Is he number 5 for you?
It's number 5 for me.
Okay. He is number 6.
My number 6 is Damian Lillard.
Okay. Yeah, he was my number 7. So
Dame
I get
has
it.
been so freaking good this year, man. Like,
yep.
And this is just more for me to go on a rant. Like, I legitimately thought the Trailblazers would be a pretty blah team this year, because I thought that Dame was going to be the guy who fell off this year. And like we talked about last week, with how many superstars are having great seasons, like this is one of Dame's best years. This has been unreal. The shooting has been crazy. I think he's taking 11 threes per game and shooting incredibly well. They've done so much with Nekias Duncan over at Basketball News. Just wrote a really great article about how the Blazers have been using him off ball this year, which I have loved. I almost think sometimes they could lean more into what he does on the ball. But that's also noting, like, the Blazers defense is not amazing this year. They're back around average after starting pretty hot, then having a really terribly torrid month.
I will just note they're down to 21 now in defense.
Well, it's still like I think over like the last couple of weeks, it's like back up around average because they really tanked. His individual defense and just defensive communication in general has been like the best I've seen from him in his career. Like, he's been a legitimate positive for me defensively. On top of just being one of the best guard scorers in the NBA while driving high level offense. I think he's been better than John Morant this year. That's why I have him on All NBA. I know that you can look at games played and have issues with that. Dame's played, I think, 26 games this year after last night, or 25 games. I don't think it's enough of a difference for me to care all that much. I'm fine with quibbling about it, but just with what Dame's done this year, I'm there with him. He's been that good for me.
Yeah, it's hard because the Grizzlies are just like way better than they are, right? Like, and it's not like they're way better because I think they have like drastically more talent than Portland, given that Desmond Bane.
I wouldn't say drastically, but I do think they have quite like a decent amount more talent than Portland.
But when accounting for the injuries, I don't know that that's accurate, because Desmond Bane has missed half the season. Jaren Jackson missed a substantial amount of time to start the season. Like, you look, Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, Josh Hart, Yusuf Nurkic, Shaden Sharp, Drew Eubanks, like their entire rotation almost has played just about every single one of their games outside of Damian Lillard. Mm-hmm. So I think that, like, when you account for injury within like the talent picture, I don't think that there's that much of a difference in the guys that have actually been on the court so far this season. When they're both fully healthy, Memphis is much better. I agree with you. But Memphis has had enough games missed at this point to where I think it's pretty close. And Ja's just the guy that's like carrying them to me, which is why I ended up having him second team. Like, he's carrying them to the second best record in the NBA, whereas the Blazers are 20-19 and are good. Like, they're a really good team. I don't mean that disparagingly. And Damian Lillard is unbelievable, but that was kind of the tiebreaker for me with all of these guards at the end of the day. I think Devin Booker's just been a little bit better than Damian Lillard. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's individual excellence has been absolutely phenomenal this season. And I ended up with Dame as the 7th guy, and what I consider at this point to be realistically a 7-person picture, all due respect to Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox, is the next 2 for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I probably am just a little bit higher on what the Grizzlies' actual talent, or maybe just lower on what Portland's actual talent is. I think Nurk is quite a bit of I legitimately think Steven has been better this year than Yusuf Nurkic. Like, that's a fun discussion to have at some point, because I want to talk about that one if we do.
We should talk about the Blazers at some point. Yeah. I would still have Nurkic ahead, but I get what you're saying, and
he's rough for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't disagree with your thinking process there. But I think Dame's just been that damn good.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing too. So we're going to get to forwards now. I had Jeremy Grant in the All NBA
To
picture for
guy in
sure.
our mentions, we talked about Kyrie earlier in the podcast.
Yeah. Evan Glansman says Kyrie's not getting any respect. Yeah. We mentioned Kyrie at the top. I would have Kyrie probably 10 right now, but like the fact that he got suspended early in the season for anti-Semitic link posting, maybe is the way to put it. That actually did have an on-court impact, regardless of whatever you want to think of the off-court. I would hope that we all agree on the off-court problems with that, but it had an on-court impact at the end of the day, and is a substantial reason why the Nets really, really struggled over the second quarter of the season. Kyrie Irving has unequivocally been a All-NBA caliber player, and I would venture that if he stays healthy and continues to do the right things off the court, that he will be very firmly in the All-NBA mix at the end of the season. But I don't think we can remove the first quarter of the season from Kyrie's discussion at this point. Okay, forwards. I have, this is where it gets difficult. So we've got Jimmy Butler, Paul George, DeMar DeRozan, LeBron, Pascal Siakam, Jeremy Grant, Jaylen Brown. Jaren Jackson is another guy you considered. He is one that I think has missed just a little bit too much time for me. But the first one that I had was Paul George.
Yep. I have Paul on third team All NBA. He's been, not to take your floor, I think it's been the best playmaking season of his career. Like, he sees the floor so well. It's not like, again, he's not playing like LeBron level playmaking, but it's been really damn good. And I think that there's been just like a little bit too much consternation about, he doesn't get to the rim. It's easy to scheme for his game. Like, okay, well, he's still shooting incredibly well from like everywhere. He's just very in control of his game. And yeah, the defense has been like, I would have him on my all defense mentions list right now.
That's the big thing for me. That's the differentiator between him and LeBron, for instance. This has not been a great LeBron season. This has been a great Paul George defensive season to this point. No disrespect to LeBron, who's absolutely incredible, but he is taken some possessions off here and there defensively, more often than normal, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had Paul George as well. I think we both had the same one because we talked about this pre-podcast, because I did something funky with positions initially. Pascal Siakam is who I think we both have as the sixth forward in All NBA right now. I have him there ahead of LeBron, again, largely because of defense, but it is worth noting how good Pascal has been offensively this year, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, he's flirted with being a top 10 player over stretches of the year with what his impact has been and the usage that he's had to carry. And I think to some point, like, it's almost a detriment how much he does have to carry because of what that Raptors offense has been. It's not an indictment of him. Like, the playmaking has hit an absolute other level. The driving is unreal. The way that he's just able to attack the court has been extremely pleasant to watch in all facets this year. And the defense is still really damn good for him. Like, obviously the Raptors have not been the same defensively this year. A lot of that has been due to some of their rotation pieces, and some of the guys that they've had to play in the backcourt. But yeah, he's been, his best season of his career. He's been an All NBA player before, and I think that he's very deserving of this position.
Yeah, just the consistent pressure he puts on the rim is unbelievable for Toronto, both in transition and in the half court. This is a Toronto team that has its struggles offensively, but I don't really think you can blame him for those that much. Like, he's the centerpiece and driving force of what they're doing offensively. And then defensively, he's been really good. Like, Toronto's problem is not on the defensive end. They play this hyper aggressive defensive, like, blitzing scheme where they're trying to force turnovers and get easy offense out on the break. And, he does a really, really good job within that scheme. Oftentimes more than like OG and more than Fred, more than, even like Scotty Barnes a lot of the time. It feels like he's the one that's kind of staying solid and steady. It feels like, as opposed to like trying to, force the issue on that stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay. We both had the same forwards. That makes it easier. Let's talk about the forwards we could have listed. I had Jimmy Butler 7, LeBron 8.
Yeah, I had Jaylen Brown 7, LeBron 8. I think Jaylen Brown has been.
9.
It was tough to have Jaylen off, but I think it just when I look at it, I think it was harder for me to have Paul or Siakam off, so I ended up having Jaylen first one off.
Yeah, look, and Jalen's having a great season. 60 true shooting percentage on 27 points, 7 rebounds, 3.3 assists. I think that the big differentiator for him versus Paul George, for instance, is I think Paul's a better, more disruptive defender, and Paul's a much better passer and playmaker than Jaylen Brown is. That's kind of the big one for me. In terms of like LeBron, I mean, it's fucking LeBron. Do we need to like talk a lot about LeBron?
Yeah.
I mean, he's incredible. His play since Anthony Davis has been out has been mind-bending. I will say I did default to the fact that like I could not get multiple Lakers on the All-NBA team.
That definitely played a part. Yeah.
At center, I have Anthony Davis. So
me as well.
Initially, when we did this process, I had Anthony Davis at forward, before recognizing that like 100% of his minutes, according to Basketball Reference, have been at the center position. And when you watch the Lakers, he plays a lot of center. It doesn't feel like that sometimes for some reason to me, but he does play mostly at the center position. So it was kind of an easy pick over Bam Adebayo and Domantas Sabonis, if only because when Anthony Davis was healthy, he was a top 6, top 7 player in the NBA. So far this season. He was like breaking worlds on defense and really creating offense at the rim at a really substantial level on offense.
Yes, I agree. AD was in the MVP conversation before he got hurt, and hopefully he's getting back soon. I like the way that he was attacking the paint and actually just being close to the basket in a way that we hadn't even, because even in the bubble, that wasn't what he was doing. It was a lot of it was how incredible he was as a shooter from mid range, and that's the bubble season. This, like the way that he was he was dominating as an offensive player while also being like close to defensive player of the year. So yeah, I think even like think of it like this: if AD had played, and I feel like this is a conversation we've had multiple times, if AD had played like 30 games, I think we're talking more about him as like being on the second team probably, because he's been that good. Having to flirt with that and seeing what that looks like stacking up against, the other top centers in the league. But yeah, I'm right there with you. It's just tough. Like Bam has been unreal. He's been Miami's best player this year, kind of hands down for me, with what he's done defensively, taking more steps offensively. AD's just been that much better when he's healthy. And I feel it's unfair to say when he's healthy. Like he's played it quite a bit this year, just, the recent stretch. And then Sabonis, like it's tough because even then, like
that's
Sabonis
one where I legit feel horrible about not
Sabonis' stretch since he came back from the hand injury. Like I think that I had legitimate worries, like, oh, is he gonna be hobbled? And I think he's averaging like 18, 15, and 7 since he came back from the hand injury, which is like bonkers. I don't necessarily want to say that he's taken another step as a player. I think he's found just like this system so perfectly fits who he is as a player. Elevating what he does will also, like, he definitely refined some of the aspects of his touch overall, and that's been a big boon for him. But I mean, just watching him play has been awesome. Like I love seeing it's less about, for me, just watching like a team that is really good and more about a team that is so well playing into their strengths, even if they're not necessarily the best team. Like watching this Kings team is such a joy to me because everything just feels right. Like everything is engaged and locked together. And even if the defense isn't perfect, like there's competitiveness. Like they do everything that they can with what they're given, and the offense is just so fun to watch. And that's more to say, like, it hurts not having De'Aaron Fox or Domantas Sabonis on this team, and maybe that changes as the year goes on, but I would struggle to right now.
I agree with you that I just can't get them there, despite the fact that over his last 16 games, Domantas Sabonis is averaging 21, 14, and 7.
That's crazy, man.
While shooting 66% from the field. Domantas Sabonis has been unreal this year. And I just can't get it. I can't get him over AD. I'm sorry. AD's unbelievable. Like it's I'm sorry if Kings fans, I know, but Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis. Like it's kind of what it comes down to. He was probably one of the 5 best defensive players and one of the 10 best offensive players when he was playing this year.
Yep.
So it's kind of tough to beat that. Okay. Our final All-NBA teams midseason. Luka Doncic, Stephen Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic, first team for me. Luka Doncic, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Nikola Jokic, first team for Mark. Second team, Donovan Mitchell, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Zion Williamson, Joel Embiid for Mark. Ja Morant, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, Joel Embiid for me. Third team, Devin Booker, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Paul George, Pascal Siakam, Anthony Davis for me. Devin Booker, third team guard.
Yes.
Who is your second, third team guard? I'm sorry.
Oh, Damian Lillard.
Damian Lillard. Paul George, Pascal Siakam, Anthony Davis for Mark. All apologies to Tyrese Halliburton, Trae Young, De'Aaron Fox, James Harden, Jimmy Butler, DeMar DeRozan, LeBron James, Jeremy Grant, Jaylen Brown, Domantas Sabonis, Bam Adebayo, Jaren Jackson. Yeah, that's all I've got in terms of the honorable mentions. Okay, it's time for Mark Schindler's Prospect of the Week. Mark, let's dive in and talk about Brice Sensabaugh. We wanted to talk about him a little bit last week. Fascinating prospect that I love dearly because he is a Ohio State Buckeye that has one of the most like fun, aesthetically pleasing games to watch because of how much he can like power through guys, but also has great shake, making every mid-range jumper, it feels like right now. A fascinating prospect that I think more than anything is going to be a real discussion point and like a lightning rod this year for the process versus results discussion and the analytics versus scouting discussion. He is absolutely beloved by analytics models. The super high 2-point shooting, the fact that he knocks down threes, the high volume shot creation mixed with efficiency, all of that is like off the charts for Sensabaugh. The process by which he gets there leaves some aspects that are a bit concerning, I think. And Mark, let's kind of dive in from there because it's a really interesting discussion.
Well, I think what's so fascinating about Brice is like, and I thought about this when I watched him in AAU this past year. I just like don't really have somebody who he compares to when you think about frame and how he plays. Like there just aren't a lot of guys who are 6'6", 250 built like a defensive end that are playing like this. And what's so fascinating, like when I was trying to like pick things apart and having watched them play throughout the season so far, there has been no dip whatsoever. Like he has been rock steady in terms of what he's doing consistency wise. Which is what makes it so fascinating because like there isn't some outlier game where it's like, oh, well, he played really bad here. Like, no, the shots have fallen every single game. And what you're talking about with the process is what's difficult because he is like, he's shooting just about 50% on pull-up twos right now per Instat scouting, while taking a lot per game. Like that, a lot of his shot diet is pull-up twos. He's shooting just about 40% from on pull-up threes. That's only about 1 per game. He doesn't take tons of them. But point being, like with what his efficiency is right now, and this is less saying I think that they're going to stop falling, more what does it look like if they stop falling? Because I think that's what I've been coming back to ask myself. Like this stuff has been awesome. Like watching the Purdue game last night, there's a play where Mason Gillis is just like absolutely draped over him defensively after he snakes a pick and roll, hits a turnaround fadeaway, and that's with like two hands right in his face, like right over top. I just want to point out too, like his footwork is so good off drives. His footwork's really damn good in the lane. He knows how to use his strength and bump people off. Everything is very good with that in terms of creating space, going backwards, east-west. The issue is just, okay, very few of his shots are self-created at the rim. And I think that's less about like saying that he's a bad prospect, more about when you're talking about what he can become and what the higher ceilings are. And I think some of what I've seen thrown around, I just have more questions about that. Like, he doesn't have a great first step, in my opinion. He has some shake and handle, but I don't think it's to a level where he can really just displace guys with that. So then when you're talking about, okay, well, if he's shooting 41 or 42% on pull-up twos, what does that mean for his overall shot diet and consistency? What kind of offense are you living off of at that point? Is that saying good enough is wrong, because it's still like a good offensive archetype, but like there's a lot less inherent value when you're not shooting to that level.
Well, it's like what happens when Harrison Barnes is guarding you versus Mason Gillis is guarding you, let alone like Paul George or someone else that's like a genuinely great defender. But like Harrison Barnes is 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan and is just as strong as Brice Sensabaugh. So what happens then is kind of the question here.
Yeah. No, exactly. Because like, I think that, but also, okay, what about the passing too? Because I think, I don't think that the passing is like bad per se. I think part of it has been role. Like, his role is very much like come off screens, attack second side. He's not exactly somebody who I would call a willing passer right now. Like, his first read is shot, his second read is shot, his third read is shot. That's part of he's been that good. But
I don't think it's that bad, but I know.
Yeah, I don't. No, I don't. And again, I don't mean it I didn't mean that to sound like as a derogatory about how he passes, but like, I think it's more he's been such a good shooter right now. Like, I meant to couch this as like, I'm not super worried about his passing. Like, I think he can make good reads. I think he has good ball placement. It's more so just like
he can throw live dribble, like one-handed passes to keep the offense in flow as well. A lot of his passes don't necessarily go for assists, but I do think that like if he sees that he's cut off, he's pretty good at moving it quickly.
Yeah, I think in terms of like, again, like this is more like when we're talking about the highest levels, I do have a lot more questions about what some of the on-ball playmaking looks like, but I also think in a different role in the pros, like we're going to see more reps. That could be good, that could be bad. But I think I lie mostly neutral on his playmaking, and it's better than it probably gets a rap for just looking at the box scores.
So it's interesting to try and determine the context here, because Brice Sensabaugh, let's start here, is averaging 16 points, 4.5 rebounds, 1.2 assists in 23 minutes a night. Like, the production here is wild. He's shooting 53, 45, 79 from the line. Like, the numbers are pretty outstanding in terms of like shot creation, shot volume, shot efficiency, as mentioned above. A lot of these guys that are bigger creators, right? I tend to give them, for instance, like Scotty Barnes. Like, I've talked a lot about how Scotty Barnes, one thing I missed is that he is a bigger shot creator at 6'9", playing at Florida State where the floor was more condensed and he just didn't have real driving lanes, right? He never had them because they played a lot of guys that weren't necessarily great spacers. They always played a super giant with them, it felt like. So every time he was out there, it was just very difficult for him to find those lanes and find those creases to be able to put pressure on the rim. I don't think Brice Sensabaugh has that same contextual problem.
No.
Ohio State, consistently under Chris Holtmann, by the way, not just this season, is one of the best offenses in the country. The last 4 years, they are 13, 4, 13, and now this year they're second in offensive efficiency. And in part, that is because they run great stuff. They space the floor super well. So next to Brice Sensabaugh in his most common lineups right now are Sean McNeil, who's an absolute sniper, who gets treated like a sniper from three. Bruce Thornton, who's shooting 47% and is really starting to be treated like a real genuine shooter. Justice Suing, who often ends up playing on the ball, so there's often a guy just kind of attached to him a decent amount of the time because you have to account for his passing and because like he can shoot. I know the percentages say that like he's not a great shooter, but for the most part, teams sag off of him a little bit, not as much as they do for non-shooters, though.
Yeah.
So really, like you're talking about, like Zed Key is the center oftentimes, and Zed Key is a non-shooter. They really only have like one non-shooter out on the court, and then like the other guys that Brice Sensabaugh plays with, like Tanner Holden. Tanner Holden is not a great shooter, but he is like a great cutter that you kind of have to stay attached to all the time. Like Roddy Gale is someone that gets treated as a shooter, even though he's 6 for 21 this year. The scout on him is that he can knock down shots. So the spacing is there for him. And he's still like not, like you said, getting all the way to the basket. A lot of it is tough twos. And I don't know that the increased spacing of the NBA in the mid-range is actually going to lead to more shots at the rim and more creation at the rim. I think it's just going to continue to lead to tough twos. And he has genuinely special touch. Like that's the thing that like maybe we haven't talked enough about yet. His touch is elite. It's not just good. Like he can hit from a variety of angles. He always finds his balance. He shoots from three. He shoots from the mid-range. He has good touch at the rim when he gets to the rim. He is also a very significant force in transition because of his power and balance combination, as well as being able to just like catch in transition, find the ball, find the rim. He has all of that stuff. He is incredibly valuable as a scoring forward. I just don't know. I don't think it's going to be as easy for him at the next level. Like for some guys, they talk about how it gets easier, right? Like you have more open lanes, you have more open space. It's actually just a bit simpler to drive at the next level. Because he doesn't have that great first step, I feel like he's going to have to use his body and his frame a lot more. And he has great strength, but like the process is difficult here. Like that's the point. Like the process of him getting these shots is not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I'd want to ask you too, how do you feel about him as an off-ball player? Because I think what's difficult is like his usage has obviously gone down from, over the first 5 games, I think he had a 38% usage rate, which was like hilarious. But I think he's like right around 30% usage this year, if I remember correctly now. And part of what's hard is that a lot of it is coming from him like getting the ball. It's like, but part of it being a set. Like it's like he has some good cuts in his bag. Like he's been active in cutting to the rim, but I don't think that he's great moving without the ball. And that like not that his sense of spacing is bad, but again, for when you're talking about a really high level off ball player, I'm not quite there with him yet. And I think like adding that extra versatility to his shot, like that's stuff you want to see during his rookie scale, like how that improves. But I think like just pointing out, like that's not where he's at yet, at least in my opinion. So it's just like, I don't know. It definitely adds other layers to it too.
I've seen some really high level moments with him. Like he had an awesome 45 cut last night against Purdue that was like absolutely fantastic. And he just face cut his man, got the catch, and just like immediately went up for a shot. Like it was super impressive. The timing was great. I've seen a couple of moments like that this year where I'm like, okay, so like you do know how to do this, but I often also think that like he thinks maybe his best attribute is spacing away from the rim and spacing for his teammates. And I'm sure that like Chris Holtman is now telling him, hey, look, like you shoot 45% from three. I'm sure that you're on the top of the scouting report saying we have to stay attached to him as a shooter. It actually helps our offense if you just like stay out beyond the 3-point line. So I think there's like a mix of it. I've seen enough of him as a cutter to where I think that he has a nose enough for the ball and for a bucket to where if you asked him to do that more, I think he will do it. But I think that because he's such a good shooter, it helps to have him spacing beyond the 3-point line when he doesn't have the ball.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think to me, I was even more like just relocation and stuff, moving, moving along with drives better. I do think that there's some stuff that I could see with that would be better, but I agree. Like, I'm not meaning to go too hard on it. Do you want to talk about his defense? Because we have not talked about his defense at all.
Not really.
Yeah, I don't really either, but I think that's what's
we have to talk about it. It's not good. It's just actually like quite bad.
Point. What is there one thing that he does well on defense right now? I'd say rebounding, and that's probably it.
I don't even think I would say rebounding.
Yeah, true. Because mostly it's their center boxing out, and then he just grabs and goes. But he's not. What's difficult, like, I think part of what I really want to see him do on both ends of the court is use his frame more. He doesn't use his frame defensively very well right now. It's a lot of guarding with his feet or guarding with his hands, not doing both. I think, like, again, that's stuff that takes time, but I want to see that be a lot better because, like, he gets blown by a lot. Part of it too is he just gets kind of lost off the ball. He'll do a lot of watching an action happen after somebody cuts, and teams have, especially Purdue yesterday. Purdue was doing a lot of, okay, we're going to set an exit screen and then have our guy lift, and then you're going to be caught in no man's land, and we're going to get, even if it's not an open shot. There was a bunch of stuff yesterday where the ball just got whipped to the guy in the slot. Somebody had to recover, and then the ball was pinging around, and then open shot happened, which is a big part of them getting back into the game after they went down big early. That's not all on Brice, to be fair, but decent amount of it was on him. So I think, like, that
he was the attack point. Like, we'll say that. Like, he was the point that Matt Painter pinpointed in that game. It felt like as he. God damn it.
Sorry, I had to. Man.
But like he was the point that Matt Painter was like, okay, we are going to try and get him now.
Yeah.
It's a problem. So it's a real significant problem, I think. Now, like, let's play the game that you hate playing.
Yes.
The Mark Schindler, I make him pick one prospect or another game. Cam Whitmore or Brice Sensabaugh?
Whitmore.
Okay. So I agree.
But
I do
I will. Okay.
The idea.
Yeah, let me catch this. All right. If they are both playing like this, the same way that they have been, or roughly the same that they have been in a month, I'll probably change my mind. I think that's more so like I just anticipate Cam continuing to get better. But if he doesn't, I think that there's more conversation to be had. But I would probably still lean Cam.
I would lean Cam purely based off of athletic potential and potential to be a shot creator. I saw someone in the comments ask, are we sure Cam Whitmore isn't a better Isaac Okoro? I think he's a way better shot hunter than Isaac Okoro ever was. He can get to his pull-up game. He has way, way, way better touch than Isaac Okoro did. I know that he's shooting like,
and he's actually a good vertical athlete, which helps too.
Yeah, like Cam is shooting 26% from three right now, but he's at 82% from the line. Like, he has real. There are mechanical things that we'll talk about at some point this year, but like, he has real touch, I think, at the very least. And defensively, Cam is not like some incredible defender yet in terms of his awareness.
He's so much better than Brice defensively right now.
He's a lot better. Yeah. But I will just note, they're both playing about 23 minutes a night. Cam Whitmore's averaging 11.6 rebounds, 0.6 assists while shooting 45% from the field. Brice Sensabaugh is averaging 16, 4.5, and 1.2 while shooting 53% from the field and 45% from three. The performances this year, Brice Sensabaugh has been better. I do think I would take the bet on Whitmore still over Sensabaugh.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Brice Sensabaugh or Grady Dick?
Ooh, that's a good one. That one's tough. I think this is one of the toughest ones we've done. I think I would probably lean Grady just because I value him so much as an off-ball player and what he's going to do slotting into an offense without needing a ton of usage and also being a really good connector and ball mover. But if you're a team that is looking for secondary shot creation, I think Brice makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So I think it would depend. I think I ultimately would go Brice here.
So you flipped.
Yeah.
You started by saying crazy.
I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, well, Brice is all like, I think I can go in as far as saying Brice is as good of a shooter as Grady. Well, wanting to see more still versatility wise, but yeah, I think I would go just because the potential that I think Brice has to be even more so as a shot creator. I think that I would probably lean Brice, but again, it depends on the team. I think I'd go Brice.
I have them literally right next to each other on my board.
Yeah, this was torture. Thanks.
Yeah. Right now, and this is absolutely subject to change, I think I would lean Grady Dick because I think that the shooting is better.
Mhm.
I think that his off-ball cutting and playmaking and passing is better. I think that he fits a little bit better as a secondary offensive piece that can be a genuine weapon. I also think he's been better defensively than Sensabaugh has been this year.
Yeah, that's what makes it tough. So,
great. Here's the thing: like Grady is big. Grady is like 6'7", 6'8". Like he's listed at 6'8". I'll be interested to see what he comes in at. He is bigger than Sensabaugh. I don't think he plays bigger, but like from a height perspective, and probably from I don't know. How long do you think Sensabaugh is? That's one that I can't really wrap my head around yet.
See, what's tough I don't think that he is a big wingspan. I think he's maybe like a +2 guy. Like I don't think he's got a lot of wingspan.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, but I'm not totally sure that I've got one here. So yeah, it's pretty tricky. Okay, Jarris Walker or Brice Sensabaugh?
Jarris.
I agree purely based off of the defense, and Jarris is coming on. Like
Jarris just had I have to watch it still, but he just had a really nice game yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. Brice Sensabaugh or Jet Howard?
Oh, Jet easily for me. Like,
wow. Okay.
I don't have to think twice about it.
Okay, so I do think this is one I disagree with, and I'm probably somewhat biased. But like as much as we talk about Jet and his lack of first step, I think it's actually a bit worse than Brice's. His first step. I think that he has a bit more shake and like can operate a bit more as like a secondary ball handler that can pass and make plays. I don't think that like he has as much shake as a scorer as Brice does. I think that Brice's touch is better. I don't think either of them are very good defensively. I think I would bet on Brice's shot creation a little bit more than Jet's right now.
Yeah, I think I would just bet on Jet because to me he's kind of the perfect blend of what Brice and Grady bring as just a really smart off-ball player who also brings some of the scoring versatility. Well, I would say he's a better shooter than Brice, just based. I mean, he's been one of the best shooters in the class with everything he's brought on and moving off the ball too. So I think to me, like especially with what he brings as a passer too, I think I would just be that much more in on that.
Movement shooting is an interesting aspect of Jet Howard in comparison to Brice Sensabaugh.
Yeah.
Like the numbers are worse for Jet, but Jet takes substantially harder shots from behind the 3-point line at the very least, I think. I mean, like where do you have, let's just go with this. Where do you have Brice Sensabaugh right now?
He's like 14 to 18 range for me right now. So that's why it's the same with Grady.
Yeah, like 12 to 17. So I'm even like a little bit higher, but yeah. I have him in that middle, like I can't get him ahead of, for instance, like Kaysen Wallace, because I think Kaysen is just such a stud defensively and can shoot and makes plays with the ball. And like I just kind of buy him as like a super winning player at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I couldn't. There's no way. Kaysen outside the lottery would just be like, that can't happen. I can't get there. You can't, when you have a player that good defensively who can shoot, like, nope, not going to happen.
Well, and I'll say this too. So like, since we have had our conversation about Keontae George, Keontae has been great. and I think is really, really starting to get comfortable over the course of his last 3 games. Keontae is averaging 21.3 points, 5 rebounds, 2.3 assists, only shooting 36% from the field, but like that's really because of like the one Iowa State game where it was a bit tough. Like the TCU game, he was a monster. He had 27 points. He lived at the foul line. Was really, really effective running the offense, I thought.
Can I give you a random take from that game?
Yeah.
I would do so much to make Emmanuel Miller a really good shooter. I love watching Emmanuel Miller play. That dude is so good.
Love it.
Really talented defensively. Like can actually like attack and face up and like, God, I just wish. I feel like that entire TCU team, I just look at like the top 6 guys and I'm like, if they just had like this one little thing, like I could buy it. But yeah, I have that. I have enjoyed TCU this year, minus their one game where they absolutely blew it, but we'll forget about it.
Okay, Mark, the last thing on the docket today is something that you have requested. You have requested the floor.
Yeah.
To talk about your beloved Georgetown Hoyas.
Beloved is getting tough. There's this one page, I think it's Casual Hoya, that tweets out every day the date, Rick Pitino. And I'm getting dangerously closer every day to liking that, no matter how much I don't want to. And this is just...
I would be, let me be clear about this. I would be staggered if they hired Rick
same.
Pitino.
Like, it's not going to happen.
Like,
but
I think it'd be a great hire, and I think he would bring Georgetown back to relevance. I would be staggered if that program hired Rick Pitino.
Yeah. Like I played myself by getting even remotely excited about what this year could be. Like I loved watching Brandon Murray at LSU, and to be fair, like Brandon Murray has been a joy this year. He's really good. I think he's a legit prospect. Maybe not necessarily this year, but it's coming. He had one of the sickest dunks of the season in this latest bamboozling game against Villanova. It's just been like this team is talented. Like there's legitimate talent on this team. Like I just mentioned, Brandon Murray is really good. Primo Spears, good offensive player. Jay Heath is solid. Cook is a guy who I've enjoyed watching for a while. There's no cohesion whatsoever. The defense is an absolute joke.
Well, do you know what the cohesion is? It's get Qudus Wahab the ball on the block and let the big man dominate.
I love Qudus Wahab, so don't get me wrong. But like, it's been just so difficult to watch. And especially too, it's not like they're just getting blown out every game. It's they're in every game and then they get blown out. It's like every single loss feels like the worst loss possible. Like the Connecticut game, that's fine. I don't mind. You lose to a top 5 team in the country after having a lead at halftime. Cool. Like I can get on board with that. It's just the other loss. Like losing to Syracuse by 20 points. And Syracuse has like been one of the 4 or 5 worst teams in the ACC this year. Like they have staggeringly bad losses on their resume. They lost to South Carolina. That team has been like, we've talked about them plenty. It's like, I mean, every game, it's so gross.
Do you know how many straight high major games Georgetown has lost?
They haven't won a Big East game since 2020, if I remember correctly. It's close because they didn't win a Big East game last year.
They've lost 30 straight games against high major opponents.
Yeah.
If that's not time to fire Patrick Ewing, I don't know what is. This is becoming kind of embarrassing. If I'm being 30 straight high major games for a program that cares about basketball, for a fan base that like genuinely cares about basketball. Here's the other thing too. They're just making like embarrassing like decisions. Like I know that Hilltop Hoops, the guy who is on Twitter, Hilltop Hoops, he brought a sign to the game basically saying like time for a change, and they made him like get rid of it because according to him, the answer came from down low. Like it came from like the bench side or, you know, the administration of some sort, basically. So it's just like, what are we doing here? We're having fans like be forced to get rid of signs.
That's like James
It's
Dolan
just
shit,
like,
man.
well, it's like it's amateur hour. It is. It's James Dolan shit. Like, what are we doing here? Are we living like in La La Land where this stuff isn't happening and you haven't lost 30 straight high major games? Like, are we pretending that Patrick Ewing is the answer still when he is one miracle Big East tournament run away from utter disaster as a coach? Like,
I think what's so tough too, like because that Big East run, don't get me wrong, that was so fun. Like that was the best moment I've had as a fan since like the OPJ year.
and then they lost by 23 in the tournament.
Yeah. And it's just like, I mean, again, they went 6-25, 0-19 in the Big East last year, which that was just disturbing. But like this year, I like just going down what the schedule is. I think it's entirely feasible that they don't win in the Big East again this year. Like, it doesn't feel like, I mean, I think it's more likely than not that they'll win at least one game. But exactly, like we're talking about Georgetown, and like it's not the same program. It hasn't been for a decade.
But there's no reason it shouldn't be, is the thing. You have a Maryland program over the course of the last little while that, like, under Mark Turgeon was down for a substantial period of time. Like, George Mason has not been super high level program. George Washington has not been a super high level program. Like, VCU has been really good, but the programs in the area kind of like opened it up for you to continue to be great if you hired the right guy. And you just didn't. And they don't look coherent on the court when you watch them, just straight up. Like, let's just call it what it is. Like,
bad basketball, like all the
posting up Qudus Wahab 89 times this year, which is top 20 in the country so far, is not the answer. Like, all due respect to Qudus Wahab, but like, he's what, your fourth best offensive player?
Yeah, probably. And I think to me, like, yeah, the offense is terrible. It's been terrible under Pat. Like, it's always been pretty ass backwards when you're talking about actual modernity of it. But it's just like the defense is 345th in the country.
Like, I've got them at 282 adjusted defensive efficiency.
Oh, okay. I was looking at just straight up defensive rating, but
yeah,
I mean, both paint pretty terrible pictures, and I think what's so difficult too, and it almost just feels like a hopeless situation in some ways, because it's like, okay, cool, we're gonna fire the best player in program history, like, and it's hard too, because like I'm not around the program, I'm not inside of it, but like everything is still connected to John Thompson, and what that era was, and if you cut Pat, okay, where do you go? Like, where are you supposed to go from here? And I think it's terrifying, because it's like, okay, you have to. They're now at the point where they can't really tap back into that and all, and they have to rebuild this from the ground up. Like, I think part of the idea of bringing in Pat was, well, maybe we can you bring in the big name like that, he can recruit well, and he's just a good enough coach that it works, and he learns on the job with that, or not that he needed to learn on the job. Like, he's been coaching for a long time, but you get what I'm saying. But like, yeah. I think this is very much now just at the point where you kind of have to throw away everything and be like, okay, we have to start from ground zero, because this has hit like as far rock bottom as possible. If it could have, when you look at when they fought the Chinese national team, did you think there could be a bigger rock bottom than that? I didn't. I sure as hell didn't think there was a bigger rock bottom than that. I feel like I've watched that video so many times over the last couple of weeks, just out of sheer agony. But yeah, it's frustrating, man. It makes me want to get, not that I could fix it. It makes me want to get into coaching, because I could fix it, but no, I can't. Something has to happen, and it's got to happen this year, because you can't have another season of this. I said that before this season, but they didn't listen. So here we are.
Yeah, look, I just don't think that. I think you have to make a change before the end of the year. I do. Yeah. Like, I think that you look at the fan base online, you look at the people who are coming to games, like, there's just is such little engagement. It feels like such little positive feeling around the program right now. Like, maybe it's Patrick Ewing taking one for the team, and The program is like, look, we will give you all of the buyout. We will let you step aside. We'll let you be the person who's like the bigger man for the sake of the program, all that stuff. But like you gotta rip the Band-Aid at this point. We know it's coming. You can't lose 30 straight high major games at any job. Period. Like you can't do it, let alone at Georgetown, which should be a top 25 program in the country, just based off of where the school is, resources thrown into the program. They have everything that you could ask for. And this team has lost 30 straight high major games.
Well, I mean, exactly what you're saying. That's what's so frustrating is that this team should own the DMV in recruiting, and they have like nothing.
I'll say this, like now that Kevin Willard is there, I think that Georgetown honestly like might have missed a real window here to like establish a real spot, because Kevin Willard is really good. Like that is a big thing worth talking about. Like he doesn't yet have the guys that he's going to get there, but Kevin Willard is like, I know that they've lost, I think like 5 of 7 or 6 of 8 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Kevin Willard's a really good basketball coach. And once he gets his like super tough dudes there that will just run the scheme and will play super hard-nosed defense, it's going to be hard. Like this is their window to have a chance. They need to make a move. Here's the thing too. Like typically when you raise this question, it's like, oh, well, who are you going to do that's better? Anyone? Like any successful college basketball coach at this point would be better. I know that like Ed Cooley is the pipe dream seemingly that I've seen brought up. I don't know if I was Ed Cooley.
I think that's tough. Like, and I like Cooley, but like I feel like do you feel like he's going to leave Providence? Like why would he leave? I don't.
That's my take. I will say like the upside in a program like Georgetown, just in terms of like the resources you have at your disposal, they're better. But if I was Ed Cooley, I wouldn't leave.
I mean, especially too, like you're leaving in conference to go to a worse situation, at least starting off, because again, like that, this is not like a 1 year fix everything. This is like, I mean, that's going to take years.
Well, and more than anything, Providence has already figured it out. Like they get transfers in every year. They figure out how to win and they teach really well and they make it work. Yeah. Can you do that at Georgetown? Probably, but like you already have it going at Providence and that's your plan. Maybe you could get better high upside younger kids, but
not to keep elongating this, but I think what's tough too is like Georgetown cannot be a transfer school for the most part. Like they're going to have the exact, I mean, it's not the exact same as Stanford, Northwestern, but like with how high some of the academic standards are, it's not as easy to just bring guys in like that. Like I think that they're going to have real barriers to being a big transfer school. It just, it makes me
I mean, I'll say this, like they've gotten transfers in the last couple years.
I mean, like, they just got Brandon, but part of that too, like Brandon was a DMV guy that they let go and shit hit the fan at LSU. So it made sense. I don't know. Sorry for making me talk about this, but it makes me sad. Like I had to get it off my chest.
I think there are enough guys that they can find that they can be a transfer school. Like it's not like UCLA. Like UCLA struggles to get transfers in, and that is a real problem for them. Georgetown very clearly is allowing transfers in, despite being like a super high end academic school. So I would feel pretty good about being able to make the turn quickly if you hire the right guy. But like you gotta find the guy, and we'll see who that ends up being. If I was them, I would go totally away from like the John Thompson era, but we'll see if that happens.
My assumption is that that's not going to happen based on, Yep.
Yeah, we will see. Mark, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on in your life. Tell the people what you need to tell them.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at MG_Schindler. I'm pretty active there. All my work and stuff will be going up there.
Some would say too active.
That's a fair point. No, I should have some ranking. I'm actually, speaking of Ed Cooley and Providence, I'll have something coming out on Bryce Hopkins soon because he has
Love
been
him.
electric lately. He's continued to go from a guy who, like, seeing him the first couple weeks earlier this season, I was like, oh, I think if a couple things hit right, like, this is a next year guy to be excited about. I think we're hitting the stage of, like, this is a guy we have to talk about for this year.
I agree.
So I am, I'm getting some words on him soon. So yeah, look out for that.
Yeah, Bryce Hopkins so far this season is shooting 39% from three, plus true shooting percentage, drawing fouls at like a fairly prodigious rate, while also crashing the glass at a really high level and leading Providence toward the top of the Big East to this point. 16 points, 9 rebounds, 2
Got a big win over UConn the other day. So
yep, and was really, really good in that game. 27 points, 5 rebounds. I will have a mock draft next week, folks. That is what I will be spending my next few days working on. So that is what you can be excited about. I will have something on Monday with Spins. I will have something later in the week with Schindler, and I'll have another pod at some point in the week as well. Until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.